goal is to protect national security, protect the U.S. public by preventing these acts. That's why we're having the conversation right now. And by us having this conversation now, you know what the FBI is about. You have a face that's been in front of you, and you know if I need to pick up the phone, if I need to send an email, and you know I can talk to somebody and we can have a conversation. So instead of if you see something, say something. If you see something, don't be afraid to call because you don't want to start that conversation. So again, we're here now and we can start the conversation early. That's a little bit about the FBI. Now, as far as myself, Sam Johnson, I've been an FBI agent for almost 30 years. I had a lot more hair than right. So, 30 years, you won't find a lot of agents with that much experience. Jackie's close to me, but she's aged much better than I have. So what have I done? I spent 5 years in Buffalo, New York, and I worked organized crime, La Cosa Nostra, and then police corruption. So it's among the more chilling things that you can do when you put handcuffs on a police officer because they transported a kilo of cocaine for you. That's kind of, you feel good about it, but you feel bad about it at the same time. But that's the type of cases that the FBI is supposed to do, is cases, investigations that make a difference, the major investigations. A lot of our investigations take years to get to a conclusion. So next up was Houston Division. I spent 6 years working Colombian Mexican drug trafficking, and then another 6 years doing training, full-time at our firearms training facility there, SWAT, sniper, tactical training, firearms training. And then I spent 9 years in Anchorage, Alaska. So kind of I've been hopscotch in the country. So in Anchorage, I worked at counterintelligence matters, including managing the counterintelligence and cyber programs in Anchorage, and including the first espionage prosecution in the state of Alaska, for which a U.S. Army soldier who was trying to sell information to Russia is now doing 18 years at Fort Leavenworth. So, and now I'm here in Miami, and I am get ready for the title, drum roll, I'm the private sector coordinator. So what the heck is that? Sometimes I wonder. So my job is to interact and to be a coordinator for the FBI for the private sector. For the reasons that we talked about earlier. We want to have a conversation with you because we think we know what we know, but we don't really know what we think we know. Unless we've talked to you. Because you're out there doing it, you've been there, you've done that, you've traveled, you've been to South America, you've been to Central America, you've been to the Caribbean. So you know more about the threats, really in a lot of cases, than we do. So we want to have that conversation with you to educate ourselves, because the more we know, the better job that we can do. We also want you to have a single point of contact within our office. If you have established liaison, like with Jackie, working out here at the port, that's your go-to person. That's who you deal with. But if you have an issue, you're not sure, we have people who work cyber, criminal violations, white-collar crime, bank fraud. We have counterintelligence that works intellectual property protection. We have counterterrorism guys. If you're not sure where it falls, which button to push, then I'm that contact that you can go to make things happen for you. Okay, clear as mud? Okay, hopefully somewhat interesting information. So what we're going to really talk about this morning is travel overseas. Okay, for that business professional traveling and all the things that we talked about earlier, personal protection and information protection. Is everyone in agreement that when you travel overseas, your risk increases? Any argument on that? Okay. Does it vary? Does that risk level, does it vary by country, the region that you're traveling to? Sure. Yeah. No brainer, right? So some of the threats that you may encounter when you travel, terror attacks are increasing, right? That's really scary. What's the current mode of operation of, like, for example, ISIS-inspired attacks? Suicide bombings. Where are they conducting these attacks? Okay. Are they going after the hardened, fortified compounds? In most cases, no. They tried in Afghanistan, the Taliban. But they're going after what we call the soft targets. Okay? Churches, malls, public gatherings. So restaurants, hotels, in particular those hotels that were frequented by whom? Business travelers. Okay? So what does that do to your threat level? Increases your threat level. Kidnappings, civil unrest. Certain countries, Venezuela, other countries. I had a guy that I worked with who was over in Turkey during their attempted revolts last summer. For quite some time, several days didn't, they shut down all the air travel. He didn't know when, he was going to be able to get even his family out of the country. And then crime. Crime increasing or is crime decreasing?
Decreasing in the U.S.
Now, in a lot of other countries, the more unstable those countries are, the more impoverished they are, what happens to that crime threat level? Typically goes up because people are more desperate. So these four that we talked about, your very best defense for those is to be mentally prepared, to recognize that the threat's there, and to always take whatever precautions you can. So that means having your eyes open. How many of you see people walking down the street here in Miami and their head is buried in their device? Okay? If you're over in London, you might be able to get away with that. Unless you're standing in the street and see you look left, you look right, and you come across. But is it a good idea to be walking around Caracas and having your nose buried in your smartphone? So just be astute, be aware of your surroundings. So without looking right now, if we have an immediate threat in this room, where's your nearest emergency exit? Oh, look. Which, back there? Okay. What about this door? This will go right outside. Okay. So just be aware. When you're in a hotel, when you're in a restaurant in a foreign country, and guess what? When you're here in the U.S., situational awareness. Look around you and think about it. If you pre-plan in case of an emergency, you react much quicker, and most of the time the results are much better than if you don't have a clue. When that gunshot goes off, if you have no idea whether, as you walk back towards the restroom, whether there's an emergency exit back there that goes to an alley, or there's a cinder block wall there, makes a huge difference for you. That's what happens with the Pulse nightclub shooting. A lot of the videos from the Ulster body cams are now coming up on the internet, and a lot of the victims there, went into the restroom and then wound up there stuck with the shooter. So be aware. The other thing we really like to push is active shooter response. There's a very simple 3-letter formula for active shooter response in an emergency. So anybody had that training and know what you're supposed to do in the event of an active shooter?
Run, cover, hide.
I'm sorry?
Run, cover, hide.
Okay, so the first one is to run. Okay? The second one is to cover or barricade. The last one is to fight. Okay? Which is the best one? Which is your best avenue? No. Guess again? Fight. No. Guess again? No. Are we seeing a pattern here? Okay. I was down with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations agent back a few months ago. We went down at the University of Miami, and he was teaching active shooter to the ROTC cadets. And we were, I had never spoken to a room full of ROTC cadets before. And the first thing was, when they came in and they sat down, they had to sit on the first 2 inches of their seat at attention. And so they were sitting there just rigid, which is kind of disconcerting. And so the Air Force agent was speaking for a couple of minutes, and finally the commander was like at ease, and then they could sit back. So he went through the various scenarios with them and got them all pumped up. And he said, "All right, what do you do in case of active shooter?" And they're like, "We fight." And I'm like, I haven't said anything at this point. I was like, "No, you don't." So every situation is different. You cannot have any one plan in mind because you're going to have to assess the particular situation that you're in, and then you're going to have to make a good decision based on the circumstances. So the best course of events may be to flee. If you have to exit close by and the shooter is over here, I'm out that door. Okay? If I'm in a situation, so Virginia Tech, everybody remember that? Horrible, horrible event. So there are, on YouTube, you can watch some of the videos from the survivors. One survivor was a young female student. And the female student told the story that they were there in the classroom. They had about 18 students in the classroom, and they heard the gunshots out in the hallway. The shooter then breached the door, and the students then proceeded to lie down between the desk and the aisles and cover their heads. So the shooter went down each aisle, putting rounds into the students. Okay? So they just lay there. You know, if that's happening, you know, I'm going to stand up and fight. You can't second guess people who have been put in that situation without any kind of training. They were just scared to death and facing a horrible situation at that point. This young female student who was wounded, shot 2 or 3 times, she lived, and just told her story. In another classroom, after he finished in that classroom, he went down to another classroom, and there was a guy in that room, and he told his story about 3 of them, and the teacher that said, "We're going to prevent him from coming through that door." And this was before. Now most of the educational facilities have lockdown capability. That was before the lockdown capability. So they had no way to lock the door. So they simply got like 4 of them, and they held a knob, and they held on for dear life. And they did this as the shooter put some rounds through the door, and fortunately didn't hurt anyone. So in that case, the barricade scenario was best for them. And then finally, fight. You only fight when you can't flee or you can't barricade. Okay. Results may not be good, but if there's no other recourse, you want to just stand there and take it, or gather a group of people together and hopefully overwhelm. Okay, we're talking about assessing risk. Also need to assess your risk of cyber attacks. And again, we're going to talk more about that later. So what are some of the countries that you guys routinely do business in?
Bahamas.
Sir?
Bahamas.
Bahamas? Mexico?
U.S.
Okay. There's that cyber threat here. Okay.
Finland.
Finland? UAE?
Latin America.
Latin America. Any travel to China? Okay, so we got China. We got China travel. Anybody to Eastern Europe? Okay, significant criminal cyber threat there. So China definitely, your threat level goes through the roof. France is an ally, right? But France has a long history of corporate espionage. I mean, you can Google it, research it. They used to have listening devices on Air France aircraft that plugged right into the government, for corporate espionage purposes. So you have to be aware of what the threat is for the country that you're heading. And we're going to talk a little bit more about corporate espionage. So that's protection of your information. So to assess a threat, you have to have information, right? So a good place to start is the OSAC website. It's osac.gov. And this is the Overseas Alliance Council. And this is a cooperative venture between private industry and the Department of State. And it's a council that's set up to help business safely do business, to conduct their engagements overseas. So you can go to their website, you can type in a specific country or region, and then it'll give you threat information for that region. Now, if you can write some of this information down. I'm also going to provide you a few resources. We have a brochure here on the safety and security for the business professional traveling abroad. And I've got some on the table in the back, and it lists that OSAC website in here and most of the other information that I provided. Matter of fact, if anybody wants to grab one so you can follow along and make notes on it, feel free. So, osac.gov, good resource. So before you go, all the common sense stuff, think about make sure you know the local laws and customs, because guess what? They may be different from ours. And all your civil protections that you have here in the U.S., your constitutional protections that we value so dearly and we uphold, do those apply overseas? That's a different playground. Make a couple of copies of your documents. Again, some of these things are just fundamentals, and guess what happens to us when we travel? We get lazy, right? We get complacent. You've been on 27 trips, and you haven't had an issue on a single one of them, and then what happens on the 28th trip? Just good fundamentals. So the copies of your documents, copies of your passports, copies of your travel itinerary, and you have to protect that copy of your passport just like you would protect the original passport. Just on a photocopy. The other thing you want to do is make sure you have your emergency points of contact. Your emergency points of contact both here, someone in the office, and your emergency points of contact wherever your destination So, if anyone registered through step.gov, state.gov, and used the STEP program to register travel? Okay, I got one hand. STEP is the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. And this is through Department of State. And you can, once again, you can do research through this website. But what registering through STEP does is if you enter your itinerary, you can set up an account so that you can go in and register easily each time. You throw your itinerary in there. And probably the best benefit is it forwards your basic travel dates and your email address to the local embassy or consulate near where you're going to be visiting. And then that embassy or consulate will send out travel warnings, which are a general alert as far as issues that you might need to be concerned with, and then travel warnings, and then travel alerts. And travel alerts are when the uprising was taking place in Turkey last summer, then the embassy sent out emails to anyone who is registered. So 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going to get an email. You're asleep in a hotel. You have no idea something's going on. Or there's civil unrest in a particular part of the city that you need to avoid. You're going to get an email from the embassy, and you're going to get a warning about that activity. So a very useful tool. Okay, we got one biggie. The number here, and this is also, I believe, on the flyer. And the number in red there, it's in red because it's important. 202-501-4444. And that is the 24-hour consular helpline that the Department of State manned in Washington, D.C. So if you're in overseas and you run into an issue of any sort, and you cannot contact your local embassy or consulate, you can call that number 24 hours a day, and they will provide assistance. So is it good enough to, do you guys, if you travel overseas, do you still carry a few emergency contacts on paper, or is everything in your phone? And what's gonna happen when that device fails? What's your fallback? On paper would be good. Okay, consider your health when you travel. CDC.gov issues the travel advisories for all the foreign countries and regions. They tell you what vaccinations are recommended, what other health issues may be a concern. Make sure you take your medications in original prescription bottles and take them with you in your carry-on. Do not check them. Okay, again, we're talking all the basic fundamentals. Protecting your passport. When you go through customs and you've had a bad day, the taxi didn't have air conditioning, you're running late, is it a good time to get snippy there at customs? Never. So you always put the smile on your face, and whatever it is that they say, you just go along with us. Don't leave your devices unattended or ever put them in checked luggage. Good luck when, if and when that laptop ban comes into play. It's going to really impact the business travel. I'm not sure what the good workaround is going to be for that. We mentioned earlier, be aware of your surroundings. Avoid long waits in public places. So you get to the airport in a foreign country, or you get to the airport in the U.S., and you have a La Carreta outside in the common area, and you have the La Carreta inside the secure area. Which one? Where do you get your coffee? You go ahead and you get out of the public area as quickly as possible and into the more secure area. Again, common sense, rudimentary precautions. And always avoid the civil disturbances, even to watch. I mean, countries just do not take lightly you being anywhere near the civil disturbances. Okay, and we always have to say to avoid those illegal actions. The new acquaintances when you're there at the hotel bar, and also when you're the desk looking down in the bar, and things happen, and sometimes there are unintended consequences. Fishing. I was going to talk later about spearfishing. So fishing is someone trying to obtain your information, social engineering. Okay, I've been to movies about the con and so forth. They engage in social engineering where they elicit information from you and you don't even realize you're giving it up. So just be careful for that. Social media. If you are overseas, you're more of a target. And if you're on social media and you're tagging your location and you're posting everywhere that you're going and you're putting up photos and it's open for anyone to view, then you're making it easy for someone to collect on you and be able to further target you. Have no expectation of privacy in hotels, airplanes, or other public places. Okay? Anyone ever been in a hotel restaurant and you hear somebody talking about sensitive business topics right next to you, and you can overhear them, and you hear about the latest deal of the century? Okay, so to reinforce the point, this is an Nanny County that was set up in a hotel room in China. Goes to that expectation of privacy. She's finally making the bed. It's a team effort to stay there. So, in this country, we have a separation between business and government. We're not going to come to you and say, hey, your overseas competitor, their bid for this project is going to be X. They're $1 million lower than you, but you can do this, this, and this, and not on your bid. Yeah, we're not going to do that. Does that same rule apply to other countries? Okay. In many other countries, the government and business are one. China owns the majority of businesses, and what they don't own, they control. So the government comes to you and says, we want you to do this. You don't have a choice. It's just the way it is. So a couple of things about this. I think there are like 6 people in the hotel room. How many people do you normally see cleaning? So any idea what's going in the ear here? Earrings. Earbud. The other person in the dark jacket, you can also see the wire dangling there. I don't think they're Secret Service. So they're standing there. They're the command and control. So this is an intelligence operation. This is not something that's being done for the first time. This is their 10,000th time to do this because they target the business travelers constantly, and it's a government-run operation. Plain and simple. So Again, is it a level playing field? If you travel to China as a business, you may have 100 employees. Your technical capabilities as far as protecting yourself are X, and you're going up against the government of China. Who's going to win? So there are protections for you as the private sector. There are several laws. First is economic espionage. And economic espionage is when a foreign government is involved in attempting to get your information. Theft of trade secrets is when another company is engaged in trying to gain your information. That's Coke versus Pepsi. So several years ago, the Coke secretary stole the formula for the new Coke and tried to sell it to Pepsi. And Pepsi calls up Coke and says, hey, this is going on, so we set up a sting operation and we buy the formula and then we arrest her and she goes to prison. So that is theft of trade secrets. They have also passed new law where civilly you can file against theft of intellectual property, and you can get a very fast court order. Say someone has stolen your company's intellectual property and they're in the airport, they're about to travel overseas, you can stop them from transit with a civil order. Does it actually happen? You betcha. I can name you stories after story after story. DuPont. They went after DuPont because they wanted titanium dioxide, something. It's the chemical that makes the color white. This white piece of paper is white because of titanium dioxide. It's something like a $2 billion or $10 billion a year industry. And DuPont had the best formula for making this chemical. And the Chinese wanted to set up their own plants, so they stole the plants for it. 3M, I never knew just how important that proprietary information was. It makes tape sticky. It's all those little things that we don't think about that gives a business its competitive edge. So American Superconductor, based in Devens, Massachusetts, public company listed on NASDAQ, and they made superconducting wire and systems to control power generation. They had developed a relationship with a Chinese company called Sinabel. And the Chinese government had issued the decree that they were going to build wind farms, because they wanted, everyone knows what the smog is like in Beijing, so they're wanting to develop sources of clean energy. I'm sorry you guys won't be able to see this in the back. The TV screen's a little small. So they had gotten the funding through the Chinese government to build wind farms. So Sinabel built the structure for the windmill, and they did not have the technology for the source code to run the windmills, to tell it when to spin and to convert that energy into electricity. So American Superconductor developed this proprietary source code. They then began to sell it, developed a relationship. They were selling it to Sinabel. So every windmill that was installed, the guts was built by Sinabel, and the brains were put in by American Superconductor. And they took steps to protect their technology. It was produced on a standalone system, very limited access. By standalone system, that means a system that's not connected to the internet. So they had a limited access, and then when it was installed by an American Superconductor engineer on the windmill, it was encrypted on the windmill itself. So the Chinese couldn't pull it off, take a look at it, reverse engineer, and put it back on another windmill. So in 2011, in spring of 2011, Sinaville cut off payments. Said, we're done. And the American superconductor was like, what? What's going on here? A few months later, some of their engineers were working on one of the windmills in China, and when they issued the command for the windmill to stop spinning, it kept going. So they pulled off the software and discovered that it was an unreleased new version of software that had not been yet installed on any of the Sinaville equipment. So they did a little investigation, and they determined that one of their employees, a guy by the name of Dejan Karabasinek, who was one of their engineers in Austria and had access to the source code, that they discovered emails going back and forth between him and Sinaville executives where they promised him $1.7 million, a 5-year contract, and all the female co-worker contact he could stand. I think they wound up paying him $10,000. Is what wound up happening. And you know, he was later, he was sentenced in an Austrian court. He pled guilty. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. He said he's deeply sorry, he made the biggest mistake of his life. He got caught. So he had frequently traveled to China, and when he was in China, the Sinaville executives had basically recruited him. They used that opportunity, that business travel, to develop a relationship with him. Guess what? They established his vulnerabilities, and they used those vulnerabilities against him. He had a failed marriage. He'd been demoted. He felt undervalued. Some of those typical insider threat indicators. So this is a case, and later on there was a cyber intrusion. So we always tell companies, most companies, their two biggest threats are the insider threat, because your insiders know everything about you, so they have the value. And then the second one is the cyber threat. And this company was attacked on both those fronts. So what was the result? What happened to the company? Don't take my word for it. 60 Minutes did a segment on this back in January 2016 called The Great Brain Robbery. So if you go back and take a look at it, it's a fascinating piece. They did an excellent job with it. They had to lay off 600 of their 900 employees. They filed a civil lawsuit in Chinese court. They were subsequently hacked by one of the Chinese military units, government-sponsored, because they were trying to find out what their defense was, what evidence they were going to offer for the lawsuit. Stock value loss was $1 billion. So stock, last time I checked it, was trading somewhere around $5 a share. At its peak, it was up over $40 a share. The civil lawsuit. You think it was an adequate remedy for the company? It was recently dismissed, and with the opportunity for Sinaville to collect damages against American superconductor. The loss of technology and intellectual property is estimated to gone over $24 billion. They're currently somewhere around $400 billion annual loss of technology intellectual property in the U.S. It's a staggering number. So what do you protect? Every one of your businesses is different. You may say to yourself, I don't have intellectual property or proprietary information. Your customer list. Do you consider your customer list of value to your company? Yes. Yes. Okay. Do you have an interest in protecting that list, or do you want to publish it on the internet? Some people publish it. I mean, there may be no need to protect it. Negotiation strategies, bids, anything like that can be proprietary information for your company. So for it to be proprietary information, there's got to be two primary components. The first is it has to have value to your company, and the second is you have to take steps to protect it. So if you're in a hotel or in a hotel restaurant and you leave a copy laying out on the table somewhere that's not marked your company's property or anything else, then it's fair game. We can't prosecute it. But if it says on there, property of XYZ Corporation, do not disseminate without authorization, and you take reasonable steps to protect it, then we can. So some of the targeting methods. We talked earlier about social media. I think half of the FBI is on LinkedIn. Scares me. Customs and security, very vulnerable. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Joint ventures and mergers. Anyone been in negotiations for a joint venture or a merger? They want information, right? Okay. How much information do you get them to make the deal, and how much information are you concerned with that company walking away at the last moment, with your information, and there's no deal? Emails. That's where the phishing, spear phishing, that's still the major cause of cyber intrusions. Ethnicity targeting, that's simply where you have someone who's, for example, Chinese ethnicity, works for a U.S. company, they travel over to China, then they're probably going to be targeted because there's that common bond. There can be that appeal. Hacking. Solicitation. As we spoke earlier, that's someone getting information from you and you don't really intend to provide that information. And conferences. Okay. So we talked a little bit about devices. I've been around the block. I'm not the cyber expert, so I'll do what I can, and you can ask follow-up questions with Carlos. Biggest rule with devices: if you can do without it, don't take it, because it's vulnerable. You take a laptop overseas, you take your smartphone overseas, you have information on it. So you can increase that vulnerability. You have to decide what to take. Most people are too lazy to do this, but it depends on the level of the sensitivity of the information on the device. If your world is on a laptop, if your entire business world is on a laptop, and you're taking that laptop overseas, you're putting all that information at risk. So if you're going on a business trip, and all you need is a small piece of that information to conduct your business, then you should consider taking a separate device with just that information. Make sure your protections are up to date. And we talked about you increasing the vulnerability for your company if you allow access to your networks from overseas. Okay? A simple mitigation for that is for you to notify your IT people. All right, this person's going to be traveling, so I would like you to monitor their logons for that time period that they're traveling. And if there's any anomalous activity, let us know. We need to validate it. And it's a good idea when you're overseas to keep a log of your logins. And then once you get back, sit down with your IT person and say, all right, here are the time and dates that I logged into the network. When do you show that I logged into the network? And if those two don't match, you might want to have your IT person looking further. Okay, what about checking that activity before? So I say like a week before, a week after, because the IT person needs to identify a pattern. Make sure you got good passwords, fundamentals, backup your data, remove any sensitive data. I'm not going to go overseas and access my banking information while I'm over there. I'm going to take care of my banking, pay my bills and so forth before I go over. So any sensitive logon, I'm not going to be doing it from overseas. Clean out your voicemail. Voicemail passwords are very easy to compromise, so make sure you clean them out and make sure you have the Track My Phone and the ability to lock the phone activated in the event your phone gets taken while you're overseas. Disable the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi. Bluetooth increases vulnerability. Wi-Fi, if your phone is programmed, the settings are there for you to search and activate any Wi-Fi that you come across. And again, greatly increasing vulnerability. Never use someone else's computer to log onto your company's network. Okay. Foreign storage media. Somebody gives you a thumb drive and tells you, hey, plug this into your laptop, and here's the Word document you need. Okay. Never plug anybody else's USB into your device. You're just opening that door wide. You're opening the door wide. You're giving them the key. You're giving them the sledgehammer. Everything else that they need. When they do the test occasionally, where you go and you drop thumb drives around, and then you see if people pick them up and plug them into their devices. Okay. What about the conferences where they give away thumb drives? What do you do with them? Plug them in, rock and roll. So, as long as they're good ones, less storage, right? Okay, encryption. How many of you guys use encryption? Okay, several folks. So, encryption is controlled by the Department of Commerce for export. It is an export-controlled item. If you have your typical encryption that's loaded on your laptop, then you can get a tools of the trade exemption to travel overseas with that. That's good for up to 12 months, and you have to keep that device within your control. Okay. Some of the newer encryption, like the Windows 10, is not yet covered by that exemption. Now, if you have a specialized encryption tool, in some cases, that tool, you are violating export control if you take that overseas. So again, you have to check with the Department of Commerce and determine whether or not, if it's anything beyond standard Windows-based encryption, then you need to ask questions about it. Now, encryption is a two-edged sword also. So go ahead and think about the situation where you are overseas and you're at a customs entry point, or you're ready to exit the country, and they say, open up your laptop. You open up your laptop, and they say, unlock it. What do?
You unlock it.
Yeah. You need to know what you're going to do. You need to think about it now. If you have a sensitive business document on your laptop that's encrypted, and they see that, and they tell you, decrypt that document for us. What are you going to do? Okay. It is a situation that happens, so just be prepared. Know what your answer is going to be. One thing you can do to protect yourself is, if you don't want to be carrying a lot of data information with you, you can establish a cloud, or use a cloud here, where the documents that you need, and you need access from overseas, you don't have to enter through your company network to access those documents. They've been dropped somewhere else, and you can access those safely and not compromise your company network. Move from disk is an extreme measure. If you're traveling in Russia, for example, you could move from a USB or a disk someone's going to have a much more difficult time compromising their system. And VPNs. So VPNs, virtual private networks, how many people use those? Okay. Standard business practice for establish that encrypted tunnel between you and your company's network. So once you're in that tunnel, that eliminates the man-in-the-middle attacks that you would see from using public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi is bad, especially in the, it's bad everywhere, but in particular overseas. People use it, we're so used to using having constant access to that device. People get complacent, people get lazy, but you're substantially increasing your risk. Okay? Follow up. So once you get back and you've gone through customs, then the work is not done. So follow up with your IT people, review that system activity with the IT folks, change your passwords, including your voicemail. So any passwords you access from overseas, change those. And make sure that you report anything that was unusual or noteworthy. Okay? Report it to your security people, and then we like to hear about it also. Because the information I can provide to you right now is only as good as what we know. So if you're not talking to us and we don't know what situations you run into, what threats you face, then we can't help somebody else. Okay. Resources, talk about the brochures we have in the back. I also have these available on PDF form, or you can go to FBI.gov and you can download it as a PDF. So you can post this on your company's website, or you can email it to your travelers. Traveling safely with smartphones. So you can Google this. And there are products out there, brochures, pamphlets, talk about traveling safely with smartphones. FBI.gov, a lot of brochures available there. Economic espionage, intellectual property protection. We've created several videos in the past few years. And these are professionally produced, made for TV movies. This particular one is called The Company Man. And this is based on a true story with an installation company in the Midwest. And I hate to keep picking on the Chinese. But so there was an apartment fire in China that killed dozens of people. And the fire went wild because their installation was not fireproof. So the Chinese developed, and the government developed new building codes, and they specified you're going to have to build with fireproof installation. Chinese companies did not have the manufacturing technology to make that installation. So they came over, the Chinese company attempted to develop a joint venture with the U.S. company where they wanted them to hand over their manufacturing technology. The U.S. companies, we're not going to do that, but we spent billions of dollars and years developing this. This is our business. We're not going to hand it off to you because we know what's going to happen to it. So then they tried to insert a thumb drive on the company system when they were there, so they tried to compromise the company system. And then that night, they came back and they went through the factory. They came in through a back door that was open, and they went through the factory and took photos of the manufacturing process. They still didn't have what they wanted, so they attempted to bribe one of the company engineers to provide them the information. The company engineer reported to the company reported it to us, and we set up a sting operation where the two Chinese businessmen were arrested for attempting to steal intellectual property. So this is about 35 minutes or so. It tells a very good story, very well done. There are copies on the back table. if I run out of them, be happy to get you more. And if you don't have enough pockets to carry one home with you, you can find it on YouTube. Action items. I love action items. You get to the end of a presentation and you're like, what now? What do I do now? So, lots of business travel here. So, let's see a show of hands. How many of your companies have a corporate travel policy? Okay. Does that travel policy specify how much you can spend on a hotel, how much you can spend per diem, and how you're going to get reimbursed? Or does that corporate travel policy also talk about personnel safety and information and device security?
Ours is mostly about, they do a threat assessment.
Excellent, excellent.
Where you stay, wide range.
Excellent. So, that's one thing I missed earlier when we talked about the threats, assessing the risk. Kidnappings was up here, and I really don't talk much about kidnappings because that's more a very specialized area, and people who travel in countries that they're at risk from kidnappings, you need to pay special attention to that. And a lot of companies have kidnap insurance, so we don't even cover that topic because it's such a specialized area. So, when it comes to your policy, if your only concern is counting the dimes and the nickels and making sure people are reimbursed, and if you're not considering their safety and your information safety, then you may want to rethink that. And there are a lot of good examples of the travel policy out there. Okay. We also talk about the post-travel assessment, and we talk about the education and awareness. You have to train your people, do your business travelers. This basic information that we provided here, has that ever been relayed to your business travelers? Again, making sure that they are properly aware of the precautions they should be taking. Okay, the feedback. You try to make sure the incidents are reported back to your security officer, and lastly, do you partner with the FBI? If you have things that happen to your company, do we know about it? Because just like with the cyber world, it's a very big puzzle. It's a very big jigsaw puzzle. And we have pieces thrown at us all the time. And the more pieces of the puzzle that we can get, then the clearer the picture is going to show up as far as what's going on out there and what the threat is to U.S. companies. Okay? Now it's question time. I didn't see anyone go to sleep yet, so that means they're trying for you to fall asleep. Okay, discussion points. I like to hear things. I like to, and again, we talked about a conversation. If I come out to you, and if I just talk to you, and I don't listen, then I've gained very little. So I want to hear from you as far as what you guys face. Is this information, does it resonate as far as within your company, something that you need to consider, and if your company is facing threats overseas?
There's one question over here.
Yes?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and how to safely use your device when you're overseas and connect to check your email, or connect to make a phone call, even if you're only going to use it for those two, and also to access the cloud and to access VPN. Is there any safe way to do that?
Yes. So whenever possible when I'm overseas, and if you want to jump in at any time, Carlos, I always feel safer when I'm on telecommunications providers back home, like Verizon or AT&T. First of all, there's a lot Wi-Fi. There have been cases, even here in the U.S., down in Dallas, where a group took over a hotel's Wi-Fi system. They compromised it, so every bit of traffic going in and out through that Wi-Fi system was being monitored by that criminal group. So Wi-Fi, Starbucks, or a coffee shop, how secure is their Wi-Fi? The answer to that is you have no idea. So by using it, you're opening yourself up.
So telecommunications would be the way to do it.
That's where I normally feel safer. Or someone, if you have a trusted partner and you know their Wi-Fi is protected and use it. So it's all in various degree of risk. If the city has a plaza and they promote their open Wi-Fi in the plaza, and you sit down and the pigeons are floating around your feet, you're accessing the internet, I would not feel secure.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding encryption, you mentioned the Windows encryption. You may not be able to take it out of the country. Does that include email encryption as well, like zips?
I'm not familiar with that one, so your typical encryption programs like that are probably going to be okay. So it's your computer-based encryption programs. Again, the ones that come standard on, for example, a Windows system, you're fine with some exceptions with the new Windows 10. Any other information on thoughts on encryption?
No, that's basically the best.
Yeah. So just a Google search on encryption overseas or Department of Commerce encryption restrictions, export restrictions. Yes,
I'm going to go over before they and we certify use Afghanistan was all encrypted using maybe you can understand encryption. So basically you put the open computer and that is a lot of the wouldn't come like we access files the same way that ransomware encrypt files. So it's a new technology for the benefit.
yeah. And we do the same things with our devices like that. It's a BitLocker is one of the programs where your entire device is encrypted. Yes, sir.
Is local telephone roaming abroad safer than using Wi-Fi?
So the question is the local roaming normally safer than the Wi-Fi? My opinion is in most countries the answer is probably yes, because there are at least some security standards there. But you also have to consider the country that you're in. And Russia, who controls the internet? Russia controls the internet. So they can control the telecommunications. China, who controls the internet? Who controls the communications? So absolutely nothing that you put on their systems you should consider confidential. Everything's at risk at that point. And encryption is not legal in China. So you cannot use encryption in China. VPNs are not legal in China because the government wants to make sure that they can see your traffic.
Apart from these communist countries, what about, for instance, South America, or Central America, Caribbean, Western Hemisphere? The risk basically that we want to protect ourselves from, dishonest individuals trying to get into your system. Wouldn't the local telephone roaming be much safer in these countries?
I think it probably would than the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi just scares
that Wi-Fi system, and then you can get through there, and that way you feel more comfortable with your data, being reached.
I would consider that a very good solution. So if you didn't hear that, that was, a hotspot through your companies through the data plan and accessing the hotspot to do your data usage in your autos.
Is it advisable to buy local SIM card?
Local SIM cards, right? Local SIM cards. I talked to a lot of people that use the local SIM cards. I'm not knowledgeable enough about it to offer an expert opinion.
Just remember that anything that goes out on Wi-Fi or over the telephone network is all wireless over the air. Anybody with a sniffer can sniff it out of the air. Whether they can unencrypt and read your data is another story. But you can sit here and see all that traffic going through the airways. So if you've got a hostile actor on the other end, they're going to see your data.
Right. So again, a lot of it comes down to who you're protecting against, and the criminal element, the ransomware, and all those is your most prevalent threat. That's what you have to protect against the most. They're constantly coming after you. Okay, any other questions?
Where do you get a sort of package of that? Where did you report to that yet? Because at least when you can actually report a fresh or recurring attacks to a network or a country that will claim China.
Did you hear the question?
In reference to reporting, there's various ways you can do that. We have what's called ic3.gov. It's a website, and you can go in and put it in. We also have our own field office where we take walk-ins every day. So you just walk into our office, provide the information to the on-duty agent, and we pass it over to the right department.
If your company also have an organization called InfraGuard, and again, some brochures in the back. So, InfraGuard is an association that's dedicated to infrastructure protection, and it's not the FBI. It's sponsored by the FBI and DHS, and it's an organization that you can join. And the focus is on cyber protection, so it's about the critical infrastructure, and they provide a lot of cyber warning bulletins, and then there's also reporting mechanisms through InfraGuard.
What can you share about there's been discussion about restrictions on traveling with laptops, tablets, and other devices outside of limited restricted countries. Do you see that program expanding?
Are you referring to the Transportation Security Administration or the airline safety?
Yes.
Okay. All I know about that program is the same thing that you're seeing on CNN. And it's been demonstrated that there are there are risks as far as explosives being planted inside devices. And they're considering whether or not if they can't mitigate that risk by some way where they examine the devices to make sure that they're not an IED explosive device, then they may take some action to prevent them from being on aircraft. So if they can't properly screen them, then and that risk is there, they may take some action. But I'm not an analyst.
You don't have any insights on that.